Welcome to episode 94 of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast. This is Stephen Rothberg with College Recruiter, one of your co-hosts, along with Peter Zollman of the AIM Group. We thought it'd be fun to do a little something different today by having Google NotebookLM's product record this episode. It's going to dive deep into Appcast 2025 Recruitment Marketing Benchmark Report. Enjoy.
All right, so you wanted the real scoop on what's happening in recruitment. Well, buckle up because we're diving deep into the Appcast 2025 Recruitment Marketing Benchmark Report.
All right, we're talking job ads.
Data
and trends.
Trends galore.
Over 1,300 employers.
Wow.
Spilled the beans on their clicks and applications.
Really?
And let me tell you, there are some surprises in here that might just change your whole recruitment game plan.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me about this report is that it goes beyond just the raw data.
Okay.
They actually incorporate labor market analysis, like a mini economics lesson.
Recruitonomics, they're calling it.
They call it recruitonomics.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Is that like economics, but for recruiting?
Exactly. Think of it as understanding the bigger picture, the economic forces that are shaping those recruitment trends.
Okay.
So we're talking unemployment rates, job openings, even things like the Great Star, which is basically the opposite of the Great Resignation.
All of that gives us some crucial context for the numbers we're about to dive into.
Okay, so we're not just looking at the what, we're understanding the why behind it all.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest whys that this report highlights is the power shift from job seekers to employers. They're saying that the market is almost balanced now.
Right after years of job seekers kind of calling the shots,
Yeah.
things are evening out. And for employers, this means fewer options for those who are currently unemployed.
Yeah.
And potentially a little more leverage for you during the hiring process.
Okay, so that's a pretty significant shift.
It is.
But here's where things get a little puzzling for me.
Okay.
The report says that CPCs actually went up in 2024, even with this softening labor market.
Yeah.
I would have thought costs would go down with less competition.
Yeah, you would think so.
Wouldn't you?
That's what makes this finding so fascinating.
Okay.
The report points to a couple of possible explanations.
Okay.
It could be that employers are now laser-focused on those harder-to-fill roles, which naturally come with a higher price tag.
Right.
Or it could be the job boards themselves are flexing their pricing muscles a little bit.
Okay, so even with a more balanced market, you're saying recruitment marketing is still a wild ride.
Absolutely. Buckle up. There are a lot of twists and turns ahead.
Well, speaking of twists and turns, let's talk about apply rates.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
You ready for this? Apply rates soared in 2024.
Okay.
A 35% increase compared to a 7% decrease in job openings.
Wow.
That's a lot more applications to sift through.
That's a significant jump, and it could mean that employers are becoming much more strategic with their targeting, streamlining their application process. Kudos to you if that's the case.
Thank you.
But on the flip side, it also means there's more competition for each job opening.
So while more applications might seem like a good thing at first glance, it's not necessarily a walk in the park for employers.
Exactly. It means you need to make sure that your job ads are really cutting through the noise and showcasing what makes your company a great place to work, and you need to be prepared for that increased competition. It's more important than ever to make a strong impression.
It's not just about getting those applications, it's about attracting the right applicants.
Exactly.
Now, what about cost per application, or CPA? Did those go through the roof too with all those extra applications?
Actually, CPAs remained relatively stable in 2024. There was a slight uptick, about 4.8%, but considering the decline we saw in previous years, this is pretty flat.
So more applications, but the cost per application stayed pretty much the same.
Yeah.
That seems counterintuitive. How do we make sense of that?
It's a balancing act of themes. Those higher CPCs we talked about were offset by the significant increase in apply rates, keeping CPAs from going haywire. And what this means for employers is that a softer labor market doesn't necessarily translate to cheaper recruitment costs.
Okay, so no easy wins there. It's all about understanding the interplay of these different factors.
Right.
Now let's talk about the big one. Cost per hire. Is it getting any cheaper to find that perfect candidate?
Well, the report indicates that it is becoming generally more affordable to find quality hires.
Okay.
CPH remained pretty stable, hovering around $750 for most of 2024.
Okay.
Interestingly, there was a jump at the end of the year up to $851. That's something to consider if you have seasonal hiring needs.
That makes sense. Planning ahead is key, especially during those peak hiring seasons.
Right.
Now, this report also dives into this easy apply option. And it's presenting a bit of a mixed bag, wouldn't you say?
It is.
Yeah.
The allure of easy apply is undeniable.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a one-click application process?
Right.
But the report raises a flag about its vulnerability to those CPC fluctuations we discussed earlier.
So you're saying that while easy apply might seem like a quick win for attracting applications, it could actually end up costing you more in the long run.
Exactly. And it's not just about the cost.
Right.
There's also the question of candidate quality.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sacrificing quality for quantity with those easy applies?
Right.
It's a trade-off that you need to weigh carefully.
It's tempting to go for the easiest option.
Yeah.
But sometimes putting in a little extra effort up front can pay off in the long run.
Right.
So it's not just about how many applications you get. It's about attracting the right candidates.
Absolutely.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about different job types.
Okay.
The report highlights is what it calls an occupational gap.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, different jobs are having drastically different recruitment experiences.
This is where things get really intriguing. Some jobs, like healthcare, are consistently more expensive to recruit for.
Yeah.
But what's surprising is that even in fields where demand has decreased, like tech consulting and HR CPCs, remain relatively high.
So even with all the talk about a white-collar recession, those jobs aren't necessarily cheaper to fill. That's pretty counterintuitive.
It is, and it underscores the point we made earlier.
Right.
The recruitment market is a complex beast. Labor market trends are one piece of the puzzle, but they're not the only factor at play.
So you're saying we can't just rely on broad trends to predict recruitment costs. We need to dig deeper and consider those industry-specific dynamics.
Right.
Now, this next concept I found really interesting. The report talks about sitting versus standing jobs.
Okay.
It's almost like they're describing two completely different recruitment markets.
It's a striking comparison. On the one hand, you have the sitting down jobs, like your tech workers, your business services folks, where apply rates have skyrocketed, reflecting that white-collar recession we talked about.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, standing up jobs like healthcare, education, and construction are facing lower apply rates and higher CPAs.
Wow, it's like two different economies within the larger economy.
It really is, and this divide is even reflected in how people apply for these jobs.
Okay.
Desktop applications dominate for those sitting jobs,
Mm-hmm.
while mobile applications are more common for standing jobs.
That makes sense. If you're working on a construction site, you're probably not submitting job applications from a desktop computer. So this means mobile optimization is more important than ever.
Absolutely. You need to make sure you're reaching all potential candidates regardless of their work environment. Don't miss out on great talent just because your job ads aren't mobile friendly.
Great point. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about location. It seems like geography plays a huge role in recruitment costs, even in our digitally connected world.
It's a major factor. The report shows just how much apply rates can vary across states.
Okay.
And those variations are often tied to state unemployment rates.
Oh.
For example, Maine has a low apply rate and a low unemployment rate,
Okay.
while Nevada has a high apply rate and a higher unemployment rate.
So it's like a microcosm of that power shift we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Where there are fewer jobs, there are more applicants for each job and vice versa.
Precisely, and those unemployment trends also tend to influence CPAs. Higher apply rates generally lead to lower CPAs, so when you're planning your recruitment budget, you can't just look at national averages.
Right.
You need to factor in those regional differences.
Okay, so location really matters. But there is some good news here, right? The report said that every state saw lower CPAs in 2024 compared to 2023.
That is a positive trend, but it's still crucial to factor location into your budget and your strategy.
Okay.
Don't assume that costs will be the same everywhere.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Job boards, apply rates, CPAs, the impact of location.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that recruitment marketing is a constantly evolving landscape.
It is.
But there's more to the story, right? This report also talks about search display and social ads. It seems like there's a whole other world of recruitment marketing beyond job boards.
There is, and that's where we'll pick up in part 2. We'll explore how you can expand your reach and tap into some new pools of talent.
All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon for part 2 of this deep dive. In the meantime, happy recruiting, everyone.
Happy recruiting.
All right, so we've explored the ins and outs of job boards, but I'm curious about these other channels. You mentioned search display and social media ads. It seems like we're moving beyond that traditional post and pray approach to recruitment, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Think of it this way. If job boards are like fishing in a stocked pond,
Okay.
search display and social ads are like casting a wider net out in the open ocean.
I love that analogy. So job boards are great for those who are actively searching for jobs, but these other channels can help you connect with a broader pool of talent, including those who aren't necessarily looking right now, those passive candidates everyone's always talking about.
Exactly. And each channel has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Okay.
For instance, search and display ads are all about targeting. You can reach people who are already showing interest in specific keywords or industries related to your open roles.
So if I'm trying to hire software engineers, I could target people searching for things like coding boot camps or Python tutorials.
Precisely. And what's impressive is the quality of leads these channels generate. The report highlights that these are people who are actively seeking out information and resources, so they're more likely to be engaged and qualified.
That makes sense. They're already doing their homework, so they're probably more serious about making a move. But what about the cost? Are these ads more expensive than job board postings?
They can be, especially on high-traffic platforms like Google. The report shows that CPCs for search and display ads can be higher than job boards.
Okay.
It's a matter of supply and demand. If lots of companies are bidding on those same keywords, the prices will go up.
Ah, the invisible hand of the market strikes again.
Right.
But even if the CPCs are higher, the quality of those leads might make it a worthwhile investment.
That's the key calculation you need to make. You might get fewer clicks overall.
Okay.
But those clicks could be from highly qualified candidates who are a better fit for your roles.
It's all about quality over quantity. Now, the report mentioned that click-through rates for search and display ads can be lower than job boards. Is that something to be concerned about?
Not necessarily. We're talking about funnel candidates here.
Right.
These aren't people who are ready to hit that apply button right this second.
Right.
They might be researching, exploring their options, getting a feel for the job market. So a lower click-through rate doesn't mean they're not interested.
It's about playing the long game, right? You're building awareness, nurturing those relationships, and hopefully converting those passive candidates into active applicants down the line.
Exactly, and that's where social media comes in.
Okay.
The report really emphasizes the long-term benefits of social media, job advertising for building your employer brand and engaging those passive candidates.
Okay, so how does that work exactly? I see job ads on social media all the time, but I don't always click on them.
Think of it less about immediate clicks and more about creating a positive association with your brand.
Okay.
People might see your ad and not click on it today, but they might remember your company name or that interesting role you were advertising.
It's like planting seeds. You might not see the sprouts right away, but with consistent effort, you can cultivate a strong employer brand that will attract top talent in the long run.
I like that. And social media is also a fantastic way to showcase your company culture, highlight employee testimonials, and just make your company a place people want to be a part of.
So it's not just about the job itself, it's about the bigger picture, the whole employee experience.
Right.
Hopefully all of that will lead to more applications eventually.
Absolutely. It's about building those relationships and staying top of mind. Now, the report does point out that click-through rates for social ads can be quite low.
Yeah.
But that's not the whole story.
Right. It's all about context. You're not necessarily expecting people to drop everything and apply right from their social media feed.
Right.
It's more about building awareness and familiarity.
Exactly. It's a long game.
Okay, so we've covered job boards, search and display, and social media. That's a lot of options. What's the takeaway here? What's the best approach for someone like me who's looking to optimize their recruitment marketing efforts?
The key is to have a diversified strategy. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Use job boards to reach those active job seekers. Leverage search and display to target interested leads. And use social media to cultivate your employer brand and engage those passive candidates. It's about finding the right mix for your specific needs and goals.
So it's like a well-balanced meal. You need a little bit of everything to stay healthy.
I like that. And just like with a healthy diet, it's important to track your results and make adjustments along the way.
Right.
What works for one company might not work for another.
So continuous learning and experimentation are key.
Absolutely. The recruitment marketing landscape is constantly changing, so you need to be adaptable and willing to try new things.
This report has given us a lot to think about, but it's focused specifically on the U.S. market. I'm curious about those global insights you mentioned earlier. How do you think these trends might be playing out in other parts of the world?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll delve into in part 3. While the report doesn't have specific global benchmarks, it does offer some intriguing food for thought when it comes to the global recruitment landscape.
All right, we're back and ready to tackle the global side of recruitment marketing. It's fascinating to think about how those U.S. trends we discussed might play out on a wider stage.
It is, and this is where we can really put on those critical thinking caps,
Yeah.
The report doesn't explicitly cover global benchmarks, but it does spark some interesting questions.
Okay, so let's start with that power shift from job seekers to employers.
Okay.
We talked about how it's creating a more balanced market in the U.S. Do you think that's happening worldwide, or is it mainly a U.S. phenomenon?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's important to remember that the report emphasizes that this near-perfect balance in the U.S. labor market is pretty unique.
Okay.
It's driven by factors like the Great Stay and a relatively strong economy. Other countries might be experiencing completely different dynamics.
So we can't just assume that what's happening in the U.S. is a global trend.
Right.
It's possible that job seekers still have the upper hand in other parts of the world.
Exactly. We need to consider the specific economic and social factors at play in each region.
Right.
It would be interesting to see data from other countries to compare and contrast those trends.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, what about those rising CPCs we discussed? Do you think that's a global phenomenon too?
It's hard to say for sure. The report suggests those rising CPCs in the U.S. Could be due to employers focusing on harder-to-fill roles.
Right.
Or job board having more pricing power.
Yeah.
Those factors could certainly be at play globally, but again, we need more data to be certain.
Right. And we can't forget that the recruitment market is influenced by so many variables: economic conditions, industry trends, government policies, technological advancements. It's a complex ecosystem.
Absolutely. So even if CPCs are rising globally, the reasons behind those increases might vary significantly from country to country.
Okay, so we've got to approach each market with a fresh perspective. Now, what about apply rates? We saw those skyrocket in the U.S. Do you think that's happening elsewhere?
It's definitely possible. If the global labor market is tighter than the U.S. market, we might see even higher apply rates in other regions. Imagine the competition.
Wow, that's intense. And if employers globally are getting better at targeting and attracting candidates, that could also contribute to increased apply rates.
Right, but again, we need more data to draw any definitive conclusions. This really highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of each market.
It's like that old saying, think globally, act locally.
Right.
What works in one country might completely flop in another.
Exactly, and that applies to all those recruitment marketing channels. We discussed job boards, search, and display social media. The effectiveness of each channel will depend on the specific context of the market.
So companies with global operations need to do their homework and tailor their recruitment marketing strategies accordingly.
Absolutely. One size fits all just won't cut it in this case.
Right.
Now, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the concept of sitting versus standing jobs. Do you think that divide exists globally?
That's an interesting question. It makes me wonder about the types of jobs that are in demand in different parts of the world.
Right.
You know, it's possible that in countries with large manufacturing or agricultural sectors, standing up jobs might be more prevalent.
Right, but in more developed economies with strong tech and service sectors, we might see a similar trend to the U.S. with more sitting-down jobs dominating the market.
And that could have implications for everything from recruitment channels to mobile optimization. If you're targeting candidates for standing up jobs in a developing country, mobile first might be the only way to go.
Exactly. You've got to meet your candidates where they are. And this whole conversation has really underscored the importance of data and analysis in recruitment marketing. You can't just rely on gut instinct or assumptions.
It's about being informed and strategic. And I think, this report has given us a lot to think about, even beyond the specific data it presents.
It has. It's a great reminder that the recruitment landscape is constantly evolving. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow.
So what's the final takeaway for our listeners? What should they be doing right now to prepare for the future of recruitment marketing?
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay adaptable.
Okay.
Embrace the data, analyze your results, and don't be afraid to try new things. The world of recruitment is changing rapidly, and those who are willing to evolve will be the ones who succeed.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Appcast 2025 Recruitment Marketing Benchmark Report. But remember, the learning doesn't stop here. Be sure to check out the full report along with all those additional resources they mentioned: trends, best practices, labor market snapshots. It's a treasure trove of information.
And if you're hungry for even more insights and analysis, be sure to visit recruitonomics.com.
Yes.
It's a fantastic resource for staying ahead of the curve in this ever-changing world of recruitment.
Keep learning, keep experimenting, and good luck out there in the exciting world of recruitment.
Happy recruiting!